we've all heard the term customer 360, right? Everybody's built a customer 360 initiative. Like we want to get this profile. What we think is going to be the next wave of that is relationship 360. It's like,
Mm.
okay, you've built the customer 360 profiles. Now layer on their networks. Now all of a sudden, boom, we like to say, hey, the customer 360, think of that as the caterpillar and relationship 360 is the butterfly. Like literally, how do you get this to fly? So I just think that that's something companies should be thinking about is like, your own executives, what nonprofits they're involved with, what boards do they sit on. Many of them are involved with alumni associations at their colleges who are sitting on, with peers and whatnot. So I just think that because, as you know, the cold emails, the spam, the calls on cell phones, text messages, they're not responding well to that, and our inboxes are just flooded. So people are really going to need to think through how to differentiate
You are
themselves.
listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Lee with the E-Marketing Association. I also run an agency, Did It, which serves the mid-market. B2B became our biggest category, used to be B2C. I own a brand, Truth Nutrition, that I use to run marketing experiments against, and I run a nonprofit, Giving Forward. Also have an incubator, which isn't behind me because nothing's been released out of the incubator yet. Super excited to be chatting with David Chun today, who founded Equilar, but is also active in sort of an advisory capacity, both in the for-profit and nonprofit space. So I'd love to start before we do the origin story of Equilar. You're active with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, which is a really unusual community foundation in comparison to others. So I'd love to talk about how you got involved in that and sort of how their mission aligns with your sort of personal vision.
Yeah, no, it's thank you, Kevin, for the opportunity to join you today. The Silicon Valley Community Foundation is technically a community foundation for Northern California, for Santa Clara County and San Mateo County, actually through a merger of two smaller community foundations. But it's quite the powerhouse, if you don't mind my sharing that. I believe we're somewhere in the range of about $15 billion under management. Most of it's through donor advised funds. Many Silicon Valley executives have used it as an opportunity rather than setting up their own personal foundation. Much easier to work with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation to set up a donor advised fund. And some of the stuff that I can share that's public, for example, Reed Hastings donated over $1 billion of his Netflix stock a couple of years, about a year and a half ago. And the giving, while quite a bit of it goes back to supporting nonprofit organizations in the Bay Area, it's also much of it goes outside to other parts of the country and the world to support their philanthropic interests. And it's Nicole Taylor who runs it, an amazing individual. There was a great write-up. If you want to learn more about it, happy to share a copy of the article. But they were featured in Barron's earlier this year. And it's the other area that they're known for, and part of the reason why kind of the presence here in Silicon Valley is you can basically go to a Fidelity or Schwab to set up a DAF, a donor advised fund, and many people do it, and myself included. But for more complex assets, they have the infrastructure to be able to accept that and support that. So they're very much high touch in their approach.
Yeah, that's really cool because I've heard folks mention in the past who are involved in sort of the tax advantages of a DAF, but have perhaps less liquid securities, and that's where Fidelity and Schwab and those kinds of folks, Vanguard, might not be set up to be able to handle those kinds of things in a portfolio. So it's really cool that a community foundation can sort of step in and provide that sort of an odd form of liquidity because it gives you the liquidity of doing the philanthropic work that you want to do without necessarily having to set up your own foundation.
Exactly. I mean, they're setting up your own foundation. It's requires infrastructure, tax filings, and all this type of stuff. And for most people, even though a number of the major donors they could theoretically do it, it's just a lot of overhead that they'd prefer not to get involved with.
Sure, sure. Cool. And before we jump into the Equilar story, you also seem to play an advisory role in a couple of other areas as well. So I'd love to hear how you split that sort of additional time above and beyond sort of your day job into advisory work, both within the for-profit and nonprofit community.
Yeah, yeah. So involved with a couple of their Bay Area nonprofit organizations. One's Commonwealth Club World Affairs, one of the largest, oldest public forums in the country. Um, it's an amazing organization. Folks that are on their book tour, movie tour, whatever. Presidents will come in and when they want to be able to talk to the San Francisco audience, the Commonwealth Club is often the venue. That's like the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. Think of it as the Chamber of Commerce for Silicon Valley. So Ahmad Thomas, who runs that. As especially now with we're on the cusp of the new administration going to Washington, and you're seeing a number of the appointments are leaders from Silicon Valley, and pretty excited. I mean, candidly, very close with Sam Liccardo, who is about to become our congressman. The I mean, no, with all due respect to the rest of the country, the amount of innovation, and I grew up in New Jersey myself. You can take the boy out of Jersey, but you can't take Jersey out of the boy. That's me without question. But that being said, the amount of innovation that's coming out of Silicon Valley, standalone basis, I think not only California, but just Silicon Valley alone, I think is like the sixth largest GDP. And so it's an exciting group to be involved with. And the last but not least is the PGA Foundation, and that's a lot of fun. PGA Reach, the mission is to grow the game of golf, and we represent the 30,000 teaching pros that you'll see at your local clubs and whatnot. And golf, as I mentioned, I grew up in New Jersey, grew up caddying at Hackensack Golf Club in Oradell, New Jersey, and for those who have a chance to golf, they recognize it's a great experience. It can be very frustrating at times, but it's just a great way to get to know people. You learn a lot about people. You get to spend time with them. So to the extent that we can get more people golfing, building more bridges, I'm all for it.
Great, great. So let's jump in Equilar, right? Every founder has an origin story. Usually, there's some kind of a catalyst that sort of hits them, and they can't sort of help themselves, right? They have to build
Yep.
something. So I'd love to hear the origin story for Equilar and how you took that leap.
Yeah, you got to scratch that itch, right? So my wife and I were classic bridge and tunnel. So I grew up in New Jersey, 15 minutes from the GW Bridge. She grew up in Queens, also Korean immigrant, Flushing, Auburndale, Bayside. And 1997, this is right after Netscape had gone public. At the time, I was working in New York City for an investment bank, DLJ, Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jenrette. Dot-com boom, as fondly remember those days. So things were obviously very white hot in Silicon Valley at that time. We had no plans to move to Silicon Valley, but they kept asking me to go, and they said, "Hey, well, go for a year. If you don't like it, we'll bring you back." So we moved out. Once I got out here, I was drinking the Kool-Aid, and really, getting the opportunity to work with startups and see the magic that was happening here in the Valley back in the late '90s, and then I was thinking, okay, had our first child, we were just married. It's not going to get easier to start a business. I've got to either do it now or, as each year goes by, it just gets harder and harder to do that. And so then I was thinking, okay, well, what do I know well? What could be my, competitive strength asset that I could bring to starting a business? And at the time, spent a lot of time going through SEC data and recognizing that there's a wealth of data that most people, don't, 99% of America, they don't even realize this information is out there. And so that's really what we said, okay, let's build a business mining this data. And somehow we stumbled into this whole corporate governance area. And that's been a great business. You'll see the Equilar name in the media. often around, CEO pay, um, board diversity, board composition, things like that. And while collecting the compensation data, we've built this executive database of relationships and history, and that's allowed us to build another offering, which is frankly more relevant for your community. We're super excited, and some of the early adopters and how that's playing out.
Yeah, so the Rainmaker side of Equilar, right? There's a lot of folks out there, right, offering data, right? Of course, some folks are still just going into LinkedIn, but I saw an odd phenomenon in the last probably 5 years where at the larger enterprises and certain enterprises um, that perhaps want to be a little bit below the radar, or the executives want to be a little bit below the radar, they're not on LinkedIn. Like
Yeah.
they've decided to leave LinkedIn altogether, right? And
Yep.
so you end up needing to find information about those kinds of people in different places than LinkedIn, right? So you would have to manually go and look up those people and figure out, okay, who is the CEO of that company or what, so is that been sort of the white space that you guys are
Without
there to
question, without
fill?
question, you nailed it. It's exactly the reality is the higher these executives become in the organization, the amount of outreach and candidly spam that they receive on LinkedIn
Yeah.
drives them away.
Yeah,
And
sure.
we just either they're not on LinkedIn, the LinkedIn's profiles haven't been updated. And so if understanding the C-suite, understanding the board of directors, if that's important to you,
Hmm.
LinkedIn will get you so far, but there's just you don't know what you don't know. And we just, every call we just will pull up somebody and we'll just show a side by side comparison of, okay, if you're just relying on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, this is what you're going to get. And you're going to miss that if you're trying to get to a senior executive at this company, that this person knows that person you're trying to get to.
Right, right. So a lot of the folks that I wouldn't really call them competitors of yours, but really more potential substitutes or things that are used in conjunction with you, whether it's,
Yep.
Apollo or Seamless, which is sort of more pure AI, or Zoom Info, right? Those kind of
Mm-hmm.
folks have started to sort of layer AI into their offerings. And I'd imagine that it's to some extent empowered your platform as well, right? With regards to being able to comb through larger data sets and understand more about the relationships and perhaps your earlier versions, had. So how has your product roadmap changed, now that you have
Yeah.
access to these vector databases and AI powered databases?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are definitely, just like everybody else, taking advantage of AI. It's allowing us to process more data. It's allowing us to do things that, frankly, would be much more challenging to do manually. But the other piece to this is that there's quite a bit of data we've collected that's not out there in the public domain.
Hmm.
Just one basic example. People are coming in, they're claiming their profiles. And so why are they doing that? So the tool, LinkedIn is obviously a great comparable. How do people use LinkedIn for today? There's the sales navigator, the BD piece, and then there's the talent, the recruiter piece, right? So our Exec Atlas solution, very similar. Companies are using it to recruit executives, board members. So we have the Blackstones of the world, the TPGs, and others who use our tool to source candidates to be able to back channel reference some of the candidates. Because the reality is these candidates aren't on LinkedIn. And so
Right.
they're using our tool to source that. They're also using it to, same thing, we like to say, solve that last mile. You're trying to get to the C-suite of this company or the board member. If you're a private equity firm, you're competing against your other peer firms, and like, okay, at the end of the day, there are no silver medals, right? You see, the one person's going to win this or the other, and so they're uncovering every stone. So in this process, because of the recruiting piece, a number of executives have come in and claimed their profiles and have provided information about themselves to that, it's not on LinkedIn, it's not anywhere else. And so that's a big part of our value proposition, is that there is proprietary data that we've collected.
Yeah, it brings to mind an interesting conundrum that perhaps a less moneyed part of the ecosystem, which we talked about earlier, the nonprofit ecosystem, they're often looking for board members, right?
Yeah.
And the same folks that they would probably love to have on their boards are the same ones that are hard to find, right?
Yep.
Where there's a dearth of information about those individuals. Have nonprofits used your platform as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's not, candidly, it's not an area that we spend a lot of time
Sure.
from a go-to-market perspective, but we do have a number of universities that are using it to identify alumni who are doing very well, who could be potential donors. And this information, it's stuff that's out there. It's in the public domain. It's in, SEC filings and corporate websites. So yeah, absolutely. We've got universities, we've got nonprofits. It's what I'm super excited about is that the data set we've collected there, it is a pretty horizontal use case, opportunities, use cases. It's not just financial services, and we've got B2B organizations and others using it. So
Yeah, so I'd love to pivot into go-to-market strategies because that's an area I've read that you spend a fair amount of time thinking about and executing against. And a lot of SaaS companies and data companies sort of struggle with their go-to-market strategies in that, they may have perhaps one sector that has slightly higher, LTV, but it's not, they don't want to overly focus on that, from a risk perspective. They want to diversify into other sectors. And so they're trying to figure out, is there one go-to-market strategy that ends up working across different industries, right? And so how would you advise somebody who came to you with a product or a platform and it was non-competitive and they said, hey, I'm really trying to decide what my go-to-market strategy is here. Though I've got this asset, it's super valuable to these segments. There are these sort of B2B personas, right? That are slightly different, but they all need what I've got. How
yeah,
would you advise that they sort of think through their limited use of human capital and
yeah,
capital in general against that?
yeah. That's a great question. That's what we're not only we like to say we call it internally EYOC, eat your own cooking.
Right.
So we're using our own tools to exactly answer the question you're talking about because there's time is a wasting asset.
Yeah.
And so each minute, each day that goes by that's not used effectively, right? That's lost opportunity. So where I would recommend, and this is what we're doing today, is identifying, who are your ICPs, right? Who are the types of
Mhm.
companies that you feel would be a good customer for would find value in what we bring to the table. Okay, so there's broadly looking there. So let's say you identify and just say SaaS software, right, as a segment, right? So that now you're down to what? Probably about a 500,000 companies, right? so it's still too big of a TAM to really effectively go after. So what we're doing is taking advantage of our own networks and then identifying C-suite executives at those companies that we're connected to. And so really that's what we're recognizing is like, okay, how do we get these warm introductions to key people within that, whether it's a board member of that company, whether that's a current executive, somebody we used to work with before. And so
Right.
without a doubt, so we actually built out a feature within our tool we call Quota Buster that literally you can take your LinkedIn connections and set up your ICP. And let's say you're trying to reach CMOs or CROs. Well, of my LinkedIn connections, who's currently a CMO or CRO? And then then who of my LinkedIn connections or any list, who's connected to a current CMO or CRO?
Mhm.
And now you can identify who you connected people. And so we find it incredibly effective because right as you can get, we're very much a top-down driven our go-to-market on this is like we've got these great relationships. Let's take advantage of them. And frankly, many of them are very helpful of like, oh yeah, we're happy to make that introduction to so and so.
Right, right. And then obviously from a marketing perspective, a lot of differences in philosophy as to sort of demand harvesting versus
Yep.
demand creation,
Yep.
right? So if there's a lot of sort of pent up demand who mainly just don't realize you're out there, right? Then
Yeah.
you've got the sort of educational strategy. But if
Yeah.
you know exactly what your ICP looks like, the CRO will say, oh no, we've got the list. This is the list. We know exactly who they are. We know where they are. We can reach to them digitally. We can do direct mail. Like we know who they are. That's where we should put all of our resources. But then you've got somebody who may come in with a more of a marketing background, and they're like, oh no, we need to sort of make sure we build a little bit of brand, a little bit of awareness. There is such a thing as a funnel, and so there's this inherent tug of war. Sometimes it's the CMO versus the CRO, right? Where they're
Yep.
vying for their internal resources. And I would imagine every company is a little bit different as to sort of where that right mix is. But it sounds like in your case, you do very much know what your ICP looks like. And so you can be a little bit more laser focused on that versus, sponsoring a golf outing, right? Although you may
Yeah.
do that too, right? Because you may be
Yeah.
like, well, it may not be the perfect use of our funds, but the right people are going to be there. And it's a nice way for us to sort of have our brand out there. So how should other marketers or C-suite executives think about this inherent tug of war between the sort of CRO and
Yeah.
CMO? Or is
Yeah.
it really not a tug of war? Is it really just a matter of
No, Kevin,
collaborating?
that's a great question. I love that question. For the CRO, yes, you know who you want to get to,
Yeah,
but is it better to pound them with emails and cold calls and calling on the cell phone versus, oh, you know something? Our VC knows, I didn't realize our VC or partner at one of our venture funds or private equity firms used to work with this individual and get a warm introduction to that person and with credibility
right.
versus trying to pound them. So that's something that we're excited about is like, okay, now all of a sudden, as opposed to just like having your SDRs just banging away, just, annoying them to death, doing this intelligently and say, okay, let me get, 10 high quality introductions. And then you build on top of that. Where this comes together actually for the CRO and the CMO is in the CRM. And what we've solved with Salesforce and with Dynamics and others is that if you ask the average user what's the quality of the data in your CRM, they're like, can I give it a -10? Right? I mean, and but that is, how can both the CRO and the CMO effectively their teams do their jobs when you go pull up a company and say, okay, well, who's it? This deal's on the 2 yard line. It's sitting on the CFO's desk. Who's the CFO of this company? Why do we have 10 CFOs in our CRM? But with our solution, we have, here's the current CFO. Here's how you're connected to the CFO. Here's how you jump from like 30th on the in the queue to number 2, right? And that's really where we help both the CRO and the CMO because it's really comes down to is like, okay, foundationally, and especially getting back to AI, all these AI solutions, what are they running their models on? They're running on crap data. And so, it's something for them to think about is as you go forward with your go-to-market on this, how can you can have your teams run really fast, but are they running in the right direction? Are they running towards the finish line versus, scattershot?
Right, right. I'd love to hear your thoughts on sort of once you do understand the relationships between parties, right? And I see this all the time when I happen to be connected to somebody
Yeah.
and somebody else in my network would like an introduction,
Yeah.
right? And there's sort of a few different ways that can take shape, right? I mean, some of them I think will just name drop me and
Yeah.
assume, right, that will help break through the clutter for them and the individual. Like, oh, I've known Kevin for X number of years, and then they'll just hope that that gets them through the gatekeeper. Others will ask me for the introduction via email, and others will go further and ask me to sort of be more proactive. Obviously, my time is limited, so I can't be
Sure.
doing that necessarily for everybody. But those are sort of different, levels of engagement that one might take. And obviously the further into the enterprise level, the more the personal connection sort of probably matters and the less a name drop will matter, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd love
Yeah.
to hear your thoughts on, how does someone be respectful of a intermediary's time, right? Because it is the most valuable asset, right? It's a wasting
Yeah.
asset, but
Yeah.
yet still, take advantage of that. Should there always be a quid pro quo? Is it really a matter of like, where's that sort of political and
Yeah.
diplomatic balance?
Yeah, it's another great question. The how would I answer this? It is, it's there's a level of diplomacy that I think most people don't understand and appreciate.
Hmm.
And I love connecting people. Don't get me wrong. I love doing it. But I also look at it, what's in it for the other side?
Hmm.
And I always will reach out beforehand to the person saying, hey, so and so, I was hoping to introduce you to so and so, and here's the reasons why. Um, I think it'd be mutually beneficial for the two of you to meet.
Right.
And then I'll hear back and like, oh, hey, most 9 times out of 10, I would love to meet them. I been meaning to meet with someone so from that company, but hey, given your recommendation, I'd be happy to do it. So it's as you pointed out, it does take more effort and time to do it, but I think I think the requestor to the intermediary, they have to be respectful of that person's
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And also keeping in mind, quid pro quo makes it sound too transactional,
Yeah.
but also be respectful. Like, hey, I want to, if I can help you out with such and such down the road or something, where you don't want the person, especially going back to the same thing, going back to the same person multiple times, like, hey, can you do this? Hey, you're a great SDR. Can you keep doing that? So yeah, there's a fine balance on sort of, you don't want to be going back to the same people, but but yeah, there is a certain level, because I've seen organizations who use our product, and they like give it to the SDR, and the SDR is like, and then pissing off the VCs, like, no, you don't call them up about this. So yeah, there is there's a for lack of a better term, I'll call it either an art form or diplomacy on the sort of the appropriate way of doing it.
Yeah, I'm trying to reframe it in my context. It really sounds like it's your responsibility if you're going to be the intermediary that it be helpful to both sides, not just
Oh,
to one, right?
without a
You know,
doubt,
it
exactly.
can't be an introduction that didn't really have merit, right? I think
Yeah,
so. The person asking for the introduction, they need to be doing the due diligence to make sure that it's actually a legit good
yeah,
fit, right? Before
yeah,
they ask you to be their advocate or be their champion.
yeah, because they're putting their reputation on the line
Right.
on that. And it just, here's a great example of a situation that just lot yesterday. I don't want to mention companies, just in respect to privacy on this, but top lawyer, major company in the news regularly, very high profile company, um, has aspirations for career aspirations. And so there's a group out there, a bar association type group, friend of mine who's very active in that group, literally one of the top leaders in that group, good personal friend, former general counsel, major, Fortune 50 company. And I was like, oh, well, my friend, I'm like, I wanted to connect the two. So I reached out to my friend who was part of that group, and I asked him, would you be open to meeting with him? And he also saw the value of having somebody from that organization being part of their group. So, right, there was the mutual benefit for both. And that's something that people really need to think about when they do the ask, when you ask the person, right, because you don't want to put the, what's the person, the requestee, I guess, um,
The
in their
target.
yeah, the target. Yes, thank you. The target. You don't want you want to make the target feel like it's a slam dunk, and
Right.
not the target having to figure out like, well, how do I respectfully decline,
Mm.
right? And like, how do I, draft an email to kind of say no. Some people are like, just no, but there are others who try to be a little bit more diplomatic about it. And so you have to really make sure that when you're doing that request, make it, serving as an intermediary, that is truly a slam dunk for the other person to say, yeah, I would love to meet the person.
Cool, cool. So what other go-to-market strategies do you think are overlooked by most B2B marketers, right? Whether they're SaaS companies or other B2B marketers. Everybody's working on their marketing strategy. CROs are under more pressure than ever before. Like, is there any
Yeah.
low-hanging fruit that they're sort of missing out on that they should be
Uh,
thinking about?
yeah, like I said, I know this is a shameless plug for us, but I think the piece that I can't stress enough is that we all have we're all part of valuable networks, and whether it's your own customer network, nonprofits are involved with, associations, and we're literally like one hop away from the people we're trying to get to. And it's that's what I'm super excited about is seeing how our customers are able to uncover. So I just think that so we're positioning this for as going forward this year. We've all heard the term customer 360, right? Everybody's built a customer 360 initiative. Like we want to get this profile. What we think is going to be the next wave of that is relationship 360. It's like, okay, you've built the customer 360 profiles, now layer on their networks. Now all of a sudden, boom, we like to say, hey, the customer 360, think of that as the caterpillar, and relationship 360 is the butterfly. Like literally, how do you get this to fly? So I just think that that's something companies should be thinking about is like, your own executives, what nonprofits they're involved with, what boards do they sit on. Many of them are involved with alumni associations at their colleges who are sitting on, with peers and whatnot. So I just think that because, as you know, the cold emails, the spam, the calls on cell phones, text messages, they're not responding well to that, and our inboxes are just flooded. So people are really going to need to think through how to differentiate themselves this year.
Yeah, when a lot of the marketing teams and sales teams and CROs are sort of crafting their strategies, obviously they may have sort of an individual that they think of as a decision maker, right? But whether you think of it as account-based marketing, or you just think about it as committee-based decision making. Now, how are folks using data and using that sort of committee footprint and tackling that, maybe using your platform, because your platform must be really good at the data for the more senior people, but then you've got those mid-level people that may have, veto level power for a deal getting done, right? So it doesn't seem like you could necessarily exclusively go after the C-suite. You're going to have to sort of talk to the mid tier as well.
Absolutely. So we don't position ourselves as like we're gonna, we're the end all and be all. We actually have a slide in our deck. We like to call it seeds, net spears. And so, the seeds, the Zoom infos of the world, your campaigns, building the lists and all that kind of good stuff. Nets, LinkedIn Sales Nav is exactly what you're talking about, kind of that mid-level. Who are some of the key influencers along the way that you want to make sure that, you've got their support, their buy-in. And then the spears, the C-suite, right? Who's got the ultimate budget authority or, for whatever reason can either, go or no go. And so we see ourselves as very much complementary to that stack.
Great. Well, I think you've certainly given everybody listening and watching something to think about with regards to before they start cold emailing, cold spamming, and LinkedIn in-mailing folks that they have no relationship with at all. They should probably go back to their personal networks and think a lot more about places where they have a personal relationship that they can leverage, as opposed to increasing the amount of spam out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're on the cusp of this whole movement around relationship 360, and people really activating their networks.
All right. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom, David.
Thank you, Kevin.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.